あのね、今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。
Shalom Akim Wa Akwath. This is Pastor Jerry Carter III. I just wanted to reference with you in this podcast. Just want to say thank you for those of you that are subscribing and those of you that are watching and commenting and engaging in these segments here, especially with this COVID-19 crisis, genetically engineered crisis that's going on. Isn't it quite amazing that even while this crisis is taking people out in real life, real time, people are dying in real time, the artificial government of the United States is yet trying to come up with ways to put together a bill so that way they could lend money and get it back, or instead of giving you the money and saying, hey, that's it, we know some of you might not live to see the next month, might not live to see the next day or the next week. Here you go. Use these funds for whatever you need to do, personal expenses. You have a family member that's ill or whatever, the US government is going to pick up the tab. Where's all of that attention? All right. So anyways, this is what's going to be happening to you in not too long from now, happening to you, happening to me, happening to all of us. This is called 6G. This is virtual reality as well as augmented reality. I just want you to pay attention while we go through this virtual lab or virtual laboratory, augmented and virtual reality. This is what's going to happen in medical field that's already happening, and this is how you're going to be walking around in life pretty soon. They'll have this full virtual reality imaging. They'll have full technology of 3D, everything what's going on inside of your body. This is what I was referencing in the scripture. You see that on the screen there? They will have your medical records for every component of your body, your DNA, everything, anything that has to do with the human genome, everything. They will have that information in virtual and or augmented, and also it will be reality. This type of imagery will there'll be a hologram or holographic design that will be in the in a format or a template of how they can actually change. You see that she's referencing the notes. They'll be able to change your physiognomy, change your genetic structure just by going into this augmented and virtual reality, and pull up the different bone structures, pull up the different bone marrow types, and start genetically engineering human beings. It's crazy.
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
あのね、今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。
So you just observed virtual and augmented reality. Now you're going to observe the 6G, 5G, 6G. This is bringing you into 7 and 8G. NASA. Some of you called me and asked me questions about 6, 7, 8G. What does that mean? I want you to know that NASA is already using, we already know astrophysics, but their astrophysics program is already 13,000 times faster than any internet speed on the planet. So what you're going to begin to come into see is artificial things in the sky, and it's going to be happening rapidly. You're going to think that there's life on other planets for real because they are using a speed of rapidity, bouncing signals so rapidly that it's beyond, supposedly beyond human comprehension. But this guy right here, this here, I just want to know from you, the number 6. We know that's one of the numbers, the mark of the beast. Let's see what this beast right here, this beast system, has it genetically engineered, because this guy right here is a laboratory doctor, and he genetically engineered a baby or multiple babies, female babies, that are supposed to be resistant to HIV. So now you're speaking in terms of sexualized human beings that are perverted, doing all kinds of crazy things, and their genome can resist STDs and especially HIV. Let's see what's going on here. Let's see if the other scientists and doctors agree with the way this guy is practicing this satanic behavior by trying to genetically create a human being.
Two beautiful little Chinese girls.
This is the doctor who changed the future of the human race and let the world know on YouTube. He Jiankuai stunned the scientific community with the claim he pushed the boundary no one else had.
A line has been crossed that should not have been crossed.
It's very disturbing. It's inappropriate.
Oh, this is huge.
He says he genetically edited human embryos, not just for research but for implantation, leading to the world's first births of genetically altered humans, baby girls born in China from embryos designed to be resistant to HIV.
For this specific case, I feel proud, actually.
The tool used by He, called CRISPR, is found in labs around the world.
It gives us the precise way of cutting the gene or putting a new piece of gene in.
It's often used by researchers trying to treat incurable diseases.
The method itself is very easy. You can use it, everybody can use it now.
Leaders in the field of gene editing have collectively agreed it's too early to implant edited embryos in humans because of the risks, the unknowns, and the ethical questions about altering humankind.
We're at a hinge of human history.
William Hurlbut is a leading American bioethicist who teaches at Stanford University. In the months before the news broke, Dr. He consulted with him.
Every time we met together, we would talk about the seriousness of the issues and in a sort of stepwise way what you had to do to make sure that it was done right. But when I heard that there were live-born children from it, I thought, oh my gosh, he just jumped ahead.
Hurlbut knew nothing of the plans to implant edited human embryos. Dr. He studied at Stanford as a postdoctoral fellow where he worked with leading researchers. Hurlbut describes him as smart but perhaps too trusting of his own wisdom.
He's young, he's inexperienced, and he's from a small rural community in China.
He's research has been shut down by Chinese authorities. It's also raised questions about whether there will be a rash of new regulations to stymie scientific development, or if scientists can regulate themselves.
We all want to be first, right? I mean, this is where you really feel that you're making a huge difference and you're getting recognition. But I think in this particular case, the outcry from the community is so huge that I think it will slow things down.
So I just want to chime in right here. This guy He, just imagine how many He's are in China right now. They did say that they're using 6G facial recognition now in China, as well as their medical identification items, whereas they can actually track someone's medical history through their retina, or facial recognition eye technology. This guy is already mutated genetically modified babies that are actually living right now. I actually believe that if there is 1.4 or 1.5 billion people in China, I believe a large amount of that population is a genetically modified population. Okay, as well as Japan. Japan has a greater than 70% of unmarried men in Japan, and they don't want to be married. They have zero desire to be married, but they are eroticized, very much into eroticism. The females, there's I think they said there's like 60-something% of the females that do not want to be married in Japan. So they have a high population of unmarried people that has no desire. They don't have an emotional value to be married or with a human being, romantically with human beings. That means there's something artificial about these people. Allegedly, there's something weird about that. You don't want to have, the natural affection of another person. The scripture clearly defines that a man and a female is supposed to come together and become one flesh, and the one flesh is the reproduction of that man and that female, which is a child. So there's something strange. I truly believe that there are many of them in China and Japan and these other Asian countries that are genetically modified babies, and they're just not telling anyone. But this guy right here, he's doing all this work in the labs, and other parts of the world is finding out about this behavior. His name is Han, or Hu, or whatever they call him, but he's crazy. And there's a lot of people in China that has the facial feature, the Han facial feature. They said there's it's the largest amount of people on the planet with the same facial features. It sounds like genetic engineering to me.
His work has already stoked fears about the future, what it could look like, how soon it could come, whether it includes designer babies, and if a tool found in labs around the world could one day make them.
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。
In a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, there's a fleet of 600 minivans shuttling people from place to place. Ordering one feels almost exactly like calling an Uber, except for one thing. The vans are driving themselves.
It does feel like from when I first got in that it is just a normal car.
Their vehicles are all over our roads. I don't think you could stand at a street corner or drive a couple miles without seeing a Waymo vehicle.
I know that some of this technology is scary for many of our citizens, but I think if you see other times in our economic arc, that this has really opened up new worlds for people and new opportunities.
This is my 33rd year in policing, and when I started in policing, we had vehicles, obviously, but there are no computers, there are no cell phones. Pagers weren't in existence yet. So to see this technology in relatively a short 30-year span is just absolutely fascinating.
In 2004, the US Department of Defense hosted a 142-mile driverless car obstacle course competition. The farthest any of the entrants got was a little over 7 miles.
And off we go. Good try, guys.
The next year, the DoD tried again. This time, 5 vehicles completed the course, but a team from Stanford did it the fastest. That Stanford team was led by a computer scientist named Sebastian Thrun.
So I didn't anticipate this to become a race for speed. It's one of the most thrilling races ever.
In 2007, Google hired Thrun, and he created Google X. 2 years later, Google X launched a self-driving car project. In 2016, that project spun off as its own company called Waymo under Google's parent company, Alphabet.
Here's an example of the Waymo Chrysler Pacifica minivan. There's nobody driving. There's nobody behind the wheel.
The company says it's tested its vehicles in over 25 cities in 6 states, but the most miles seem to have been driven around Phoenix, Arizona.
From the police department's point of view, our mission is to keep our city safe. So we recognize this technology as something that could really impact our roadways, because the overwhelming majority of collisions are preventable.
You get in the car and you have a seat and it has a start button, and it's pretty trippy when you see the fact that the car is driving itself. It's amazing to see how well the brain processes information as a driver, to see the car do the same exact thing. It's great to be a part of history. For my kids to experience. My daughter actually liked it a lot, didn't she?
Right now, Waymo is doing two main things in the Phoenix area. Around 1,000 members of the community have access to its rideshare beta program, Waymo One. Users can summon one of Waymo's 600 vehicles 24/7 and ride anywhere within a limited local region. And these users are actually paying for the rides. It's not just a free demo. It also has a partnership with Lyft and makes 10 of its vehicles available to the general public via Lyft's app.
I probably use Waymo maybe 10% of the time. The biggest limiting factor is that it only goes in a certain defined area, mostly in Chandler and Tempe and maybe a little bit of Mesa. If it went all the way downtown, I would probably take it a whole lot more.
The reason Waymo is limited to a small region is because its cars are autonomous, but only in specific locations. Everywhere it can drive has been carefully mapped and analyzed so that even before sensing anything new, the vehicle already has a good sense of where it is. The Society of Automotive Engineers came up with a set of standards defining the levels of autonomy a vehicle could be, ranging from 0 to 5. And right now, Waymo's vehicles are at a 4, capable of full autonomy, but only sometimes.
Tesla refers to its driver assist systems as autopilot. Nobody in the industry thinks that's the case. Waymo and General Motors Cruise Automation are very close to having what they refer to as level 5 cars most of the time.
So right now it's standard for Waymo vehicles to have safety drivers behind the wheel at all times, ready to take over if something were to go wrong. And beyond that, there's a team of support staff on call to help riders. The vehicles are constantly maintained by a team of people, they're cleaned by a team of people. While the driving itself is done mostly by a computer, the system is still dependent on human labor.
Now, a lot of the business promise and also the hope for these machines, these autonomous vehicles, is that they eliminate labor and they eliminate the need for human beings to drive and to be stuck in jobs like delivering pizzas or picking up the elderly or the blind from their homes and taking them to services, whatever it needs to be. When we think through that a little more carefully, though, some of the chinks in that idea show up. For example, think something like Meals on Wheels. The vehicle shows up, it opens the door, there's the meal. Maybe they can get out to the curb to get it, maybe not. Even if they could, though, when that human driver shows up with a meal on wheels, they actually come to the door. Maybe they sit for a little bit. So it's this human interaction that's still very much a part of these transportation functions.
I think there's still a ways to go before they're ready for prime time on the roadways, but we want to be helpful in the testing of it, and then we want to make certain that whether it's at the state level or the federal level, that all of those regulations and rules are being properly followed.
Developing vehicles that adhere to strict safety protocols, including speed limits, has occasionally been a point of contention for other human drivers on the road.
There's been some experience where, because our Waymo vehicles actually follow the rules and the law, that some people who tend to be in a rush get bothered by that. So there's a transition that's going to happen.
But with rideshare companies like Lyft and Uber struggling to be profitable, for them, leaning into self-driving cars could make sense.
As we saw from the Lyft and Uber IPOs, there does not appear to be a path to profitability for ride-hailing services with human drivers. Even buses, where operating the vehicle is very expensive, the vehicle itself, the major portion of that expense is the driver.
The future of autonomous vehicles is more likely to be in the form of ride-sharing fleets that you can borrow when you need, but no actual car ownership. So I think they see an opportunity in cars that'll be able to transport things, transport people, but not so much around car ownership. And it's still a little bit unclear as to where they see the biggest money coming from, but at least that's where it's evolved to.
In March 2018, a woman named Elaine Herzberg was killed by an Uber self-driving car just 13 miles from Waymo's office. But it didn't slow Waymo down.
It was business as usual in Chandler. The next day, just as many vehicles were on the road. It was an unfortunate incident for another company, but again, Waymo has had an extremely conservative business model and safety protocols that they had really weathered that storm well.
We were very saddened, of course, by what happened in Arizona. Our hearts go out to the family and all those impacted by the crash. At Waymo, our focus has always been safety.
In our city, there have been no collisions where the Waymo has been at fault. So you can take that any way you want as an indicator, but it's such a small sample size. Certainly we anticipate the more of these vehicles out there functioning at the level that they're expected to function at, if it takes away that human element, it potentially could have a very positive impact on the roadways.
Some people have asked, is it actually safe? When you are inside, do you get nervous, or, do you think anything is going to go wrong? And I said, well, no, there's always a driver, at least while they're still getting the technology, hammered out.
Waymo is way ahead of everybody else in terms of the technology. They have these disengagement reports in California. They disengage a lot less, a lot fewer times than anybody else.
I think the robot drivers are probably actually better than the human drivers.
Arriving shortly at your destination. Please keep your seatbelt fastened until we reach your destination, and remember to take all your belongings with you.
Proponents of autonomous vehicles make compelling claims about the potential benefits of self-driving cars.
94% of all crashes are due to human error. 42 hours are wasted sitting in traffic per person per year in the US. That's an entire working week every year. And millions more people aren't able to drive because they're elderly or living with a disability. And self-driving cars have the potential to change all of that for all of us.
I think these cars and automobiles and trucks provide a real opportunity for the state. There's a lot that can be done for disabled people, for blind people, for elderly people. So many of the deaths that happen on our roads are a result of human error, and I believe these autonomous vehicles can provide higher public safety, and that really is the objective.
But it's just not clear these things would actually happen with more self-driving cars on the road.
One of the things I often hear from people is when an autonomous vehicle is better than the 50th percentile driver on the road, we have an absolute responsibility to let them onto the road. Others, like Elon Musk, have said it's almost irresponsible not to have these vehicles out there because they are safer and will be safer than human drivers. That's not been proven. It presents a problem, which is people dying on the road or crashing and so forth, and saying, well, therefore you need this solution. But of course, there are a lot of solutions, and one of the solutions we see right now are things like autonomous braking, lane keeping assist, all of these driver assist systems which take a good driver and make them better. And so even if we could say that an autonomous vehicle was better than a human driver, it doesn't mean that an autonomous vehicle is better than a human driver plus all of the advanced driver assist systems we have.
And if the goal is safety above all else, there are other less complicated things that could be done. For example, since speeding is known to be one of the top causes of car accidents, members of the European Parliament recently provisionally agreed to require all vehicles sold in Europe to include mandatory speed limiters.
A lot of the promises about autonomous vehicles are around congestion and particularly safety. They are kind of a silver bullet, Silicon Valley, a tech bro solution to the problem of road deaths. There's a much less exciting solution to road deaths, and particularly in urban areas, and it's called Vision Zero. And the premise is pretty straightforward. It says, let's start with safety, and then let's add mobility. The current idea around driving and around cars is, let's get as much mobility as we can, and then let's start to make things safer. Whether or not autonomous vehicles are safer than human drivers is in a lot of ways beside the point. They're more lucrative than selling cars to people. They're more lucrative than selling rides driven by human beings.
So while there are other potentially better solutions, updating infrastructure and making policy changes is never going to be as interesting to most people as cars that can drive themselves.
With the new technology, there's going to be a time period where you have to, give it a try and work out the bugs. Like if there's a computer program, I don't think I've ever seen somebody code something and hit run and it works perfectly the first time. You have to give it some real world experience, and so you know that not everything is going to work perfectly right off the bat.
I used to say a year ago that I was sitting in a diner and looking out the door at 6 a.m. and I saw in the span of an hour 12 Waymo vehicles. That was trumped about 6 weeks ago when I saw about 30 Waymo vehicles at intersections, and I don't know if it was a parade or whatever, but they're just all over our streets, and it's a good relationship.
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
ね、今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。
This is what it looks like. Let's go for a ride. When you let a computer take the wheel. And the steering wheel turns itself. That is very bizarre. This is the latest from Chinese tech giant Baidu, a self-driving car. We zip down the road at a healthy 50 kilometers an hour, steered straight by a series of cameras, sensors, and this spinning LiDAR. Think radar, but with lasers.
Yes, it's continuously scanning, and the result is shown in runtime on this pad down at the back.
What's it scanning for?
It's looking for all the objects and everything that is 3D detectable.
That's Wesley Shao, a senior project engineer. When he says 3D detectable, he means anything a human driver would see, like a traffic light.
Reassuring when we actually see the red light and we come to a nice, slow, safe stop.
This was a highly controlled course. No real surprises, no sudden slamming on the brakes. These cars aren't ready for the public yet, because in order for this to work, Baidu has to make these unquestionably safe. Progress has been made, but there is a long way to go.
Our goal is to make it better than any human driver in the world.
This is Jing Wang.
So this is the brain.
Yes.
He runs the project.
Within 5 years, we are going to make at least only one third as big as.
Smaller, faster, and safer.
We are trying very hard to show the real capability that autonomous driving car is safer actually than a human driver.
Convincing consumers used to control is a tall order, especially because driving in one of these is weird.
So this whole experience is kind of odd because on the one hand, it feels like any other driving experience you've ever had, but on the other hand, right now the car is doing a U-turn on its own, and it's very difficult to describe. It's kind of bizarre and oddly normal at the same time.
But companies are betting big that people like me will get over their unease. By 2021, big players like Uber, BMW, and Ford say they'll have their own self-driving cars on the road. Baidu wants to begin mass producing that same year, one of the largest investments they've ever made.
10 years away, majority of the car produced in that year will be autonomous driving, fully autonomous driving.
A glimpse into the future. Still lots of cars, but drivers, optional. Matt Rivers, CNN, Wuzhen, China.
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
ね、今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。
How many Ford self-driving cars are on the road and what are they doing?
Well, we're going to start mass producing a fully autonomous vehicle, what we call a level 4 vehicle, which means it won't have a steering wheel, won't have a gas pedal or a brake pedal. And we see the first applications, kind of commercial applications, whether a ride-hailing or ride-sharing service, and in major cities. So 2021 is where our intent is to launch.
How big do you imagine the fleet is at that point?
Well, it'll start off fairly modest as we start, signing up customers and also being able to populate some of the cities with these vehicles. But we see it growing over time. And being a very good business for us and also providing a lot of societal benefits for folks.
So you're doubling your workforce in Silicon Valley. You're investing in 4 different technology companies to help get you there. This suggests more of a go-it-alone approach when it comes to self-driving cars. Why take that route?
Well, actually, we're asking ourselves 3 very important questions when it comes to the development of autonomous vehicles and in a lot of different areas. One is, where do we want to play? Second is, how do we want to win? and third is what are the capabilities that we need. So when you look at autonomous vehicles, we've been at this for over 10 years. So we have a lot of engineering know-how. But as you can see from some of the partnering we're doing with some of these great technical partners, we have said in some cases, we can't do it all ourselves. So we're partnering with a lot of different companies to allow us to realize that vision of getting fully autonomous vehicles on the road.
That said, we've seen you do a lot of small deals rather than one or two big ones. Why is that? Do you want to avoid sharing the wheel with another big company?
Not at all. We, first off, as we think about how we're going about this, we're not in a race to make announcements. What we are in a race to do is do what's right for our customers and do what's right for our business. And so we're looking at the technology roadmap for delivering fully autonomous vehicles and seeking out partners that will help fill in the spaces for us that we've worked on for the last 10 years.
So we've seen so many partnerships, so many big investments in the car industry, plus the tech industry. You've got GM buying Cruise Automation for $1 billion, investing $500 million in Lyft, Apple investing $1 billion in Didi, Volkswagen, and Get, Daimler, and MyTaxi. Why haven't we seen you do deals like that?
Well, again, we're not in a race to make announcements. We're in a race to do what's right for, as we want to serve our customers.
Are you open to deals like that?
We have always said that we are open to everything. Everything's on the table for us. But it has to make, as we think about those things, it has to make sense for our brand. It has to create value for our company. And that's the lens in which we look through. But we talk with everybody just like everybody else does.
So how do you imagine getting into the ride-sharing business or working with a company like Uber without a deal like that?
Well, in some cases, we're doing some pilots right now. We've done some ride-sharing and car-sharing pilots for the last year and a half, some with vehicles, some with shuttles. And we'll continue to do that. And at the same time, keep talking with others and see what makes sense from a business model standpoint in terms of how can we make a good business opportunity out of this, but also at the same time fulfill a societal need.
Google remains a big and early player in the self-driving car space. Why didn't a deal between Ford and Google work out? And could a deal still happen?
Well, we talk to everybody, and as you can expect, those conversations are private. But again, we always run through the lens of whoever we talk to, does it make business sense for us? Does it help build our brand?
おかえりなさい。
ただいま。
あのね、今日は一緒に暮らしてから3ヶ月の記念日だよ。覚えてた？
もちろん。